Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me. Bless his holy name. Right where you are, can you just tell God how wonderful he is, how excellent he is, what a mighty God we serve, that angels bow before him and heaven and earth adore him. We serve a great big God, and I say all the time that a great big God deserves a great big praise. Having he been great in your life, and if God has been great in your life, then you need to give him a great big praise. We're coming to you live from the office, the store of Healthy You Pharmacy. Again, we thank you for joining in. We thank you for coming in. Please tell and text your neighbors and your friends. Let them know that we are on live. This is NJTV, the hour of power, where we want to empower and encourage the people of God. We thank God for all of you. We thank God for our life, our health, and our strength. It is in him that we move, we live, and have our being. And again, we have my beautiful wife with us, and we have our church mother, our state supervisor with us. We've been talking about the coronavirus, COVID-19, the do's and don'ts. Tonight, we're going to continue on with that conversation. Again, subscribe, tell your family that we are on. Please send your questions in, and if we have time, we'll get to it. We thank you for your comments, your concerns, and your questions. But tonight, I just want to jump in and get right into the subject matter. Again, we thank God for our church mother and Dr. Jada that's with us. We have an excellent panel of professionals, and we thank God for them. But I just want to jump right in with this discussion, and not so much a question and answering session. But I want to be real tonight. And my first question is, what impact should this quarantine, should the shutdown, the social distancing, what impact should this have on our life? We're starting to hear about people that's dying. We're starting to hear about the numbers. We are starting to hear about people we know personally that's either sick or has died. How should this affect our life? And I would like to just jump right into it. One day they said it was okay to be out. The next day they said, stay in. One day they said, don't wear a face mask. And the next day they said, don't leave the house without it. And so how should this affect our life? As Christians, we're not walking in fear. I understand we're walking in faith, and we are led by God. But everybody got something to say. I got friends that have shut down. As a pastor, New Jerusalem, we shut down about, 3 or 4 or 5 weeks ago. I have friends that still having service and saying that their faith is in God. How should this affect us? How should this impact our life? Y'all jump in, y'all.
Well, for me, and I'm going to use myself as an example, it has inspired me to reach out into our community to educate our people as to what is going on. We're hearing a lot, but there are still messages that we're not receiving. And it's time for us to become serious, because we walk by faith, but this is not a faith fight. This is something that deals with an epidemic, a pandemic, and we need to prepare ourselves physically, spiritually, and naturally to fight this. And so I have been very, very concerned about reaching out and getting the information to the people, because now it's really past time for us to be serious about this. I've been listening to a few statistics, and if you notice, the statistics they're varying in different spots. But the one thing for sure is it's really hitting the Black community very, very, very hard. And so it's time for us to feel and to know that it's time for us to shift into another gear and get busy and to do some things that will be for the betterment of myself, our family, the community, and anyone else that's involved.
I agree with all of those things. But also I think that it's a lesson for us. We shouldn't go back to life and business as usual after this is over with, because I think if you didn't learn something through this, you're missing it.
Yeah.
Not only should we be walking more by faith and have a closer walk with God and fasting and praying more, but we should also be more mindful of our lifestyle and change some things that we're doing in relation to our daily life, whether it be the handshakes, whether it, eating out, taking care of our body, exercise, diet, all of these things should be on your mind right now, not just the coronavirus, because it's more impactful in African Americans for a reason. We're not taking care of ourselves. We're not educating ourselves, and we're not doing the things necessary to live a healthy lifestyle. And I think that should be the number one lesson coming out of this. Just as both of them said, people are dying all around us. And it's not by chance that we are streaming to you to try to educate and help you. I think that the biggest thing for me, just like Mom, is trying to help and reach someone. We're not doing this for YouTube likes or views. We want you to share it because we want to save a life. We want to reach someone that may not have access to the information or trust the source of the information on the daily news. Sometimes the news can be overwhelming, and I get it, but there are some things that we need to get out and we need to pay attention to, because as the Black community, we're missing it, and it's showing by the number of deaths.
And as you were talking, I thought about some notes that I had made. Here to now, when we hear the statistics, it generally talks about the people that are dying. Now, they didn't put a color on it until maybe about a week ago. And then when they put a color on it, we found out that we are 50 to 80% that's dying. And there's a reason. During all of the investigation and my research and trying to seek knowledge and information, I only heard this week that you can change your life by changing your eating habits this week forever. And so it's time for us to become responsible adults and not just die because I have poor health or my eating habits are terrible. One of the things when they're using the word underline, it deals with your diet and how well you're taking care or how well you're not taking care of yourself. We were never supposed to eat just whatever we wanted when we wanted it. The Bible even alludes to how we should eat and how we should conduct our appetites. And sometimes we eat until we can't even move from the table. But you can start today, and they have given us an outline of foods that will change your life if we stick to it. And this is where we come to the line. We draw the line on, are we going to be adults? Are we going to play like children? This is very, very serious. Because if I'm not going to take care of myself, then I'm not going to take care of my family. We have to make the first step, and we can change our lives by changing our diets forever.
I think another thing is being careful what we watch and who we watch and what we listen to, depending on which network you watch, whether it's the right or the left. It's one says not that bad, and the other says the end of the world. And one of the things that I told New Jerusalem is we have to listen to what they're not saying.
Right.
And in that, they're not saying, or what they're not saying is a whole lot. They, even in the interviews, they direct and guide the interviews of, they will interview a person with corona, but they're guide the interview to lead them to say what they want them to say. This is way serious than even what the TV is saying. And I believe as saints, as people of God, we're not paying attention closely to the signs of the time. I think we got too much to say. We're complaining, we're arguing, and the only thing that we really stopped doing is going to church. You drive by Walmart, it's full. You drive by Martin's, it's full. The only thing that's cut out is church. And as a result, we have to rely on what the commercials, what the TV is want us to know, and not the very thing that we should know.
And just to circle back to the diet and the lifestyle changes, I agree. And if you think about it, we've been quarantined for several weeks. And when you look at lifestyle changes, it takes 30 days to make something a habit and change your pattern and change your life. So if we can stick to not eating fast food, not going out to eat, and eating healthier and changing the way that you're dieting now, it will be a long-lasting and can be a lifelong change because it's going to last for more than 30 days. So that's all it takes is 30 days of us committing to something. And along with the change in diet, to tie in spiritually, we should add in additional prayer. You have more time. If you're truly quarantined, what are you doing with those additional hours at home besides watching TV? So we should be adding additional prayer time and fasting more regularly, and also implementing exercise. Instead of turning on the on-demand movie list, there's free exercise programs. I'll walk in the living room with the kids, or just, go outside and walk around the block. There's things that you can start to do differently today that will change your life forever. Not just because of coronavirus, but because God is trying to get our attention through coronavirus to make some changes.
And there's some things that we can pray about, but then there are some things we need to take a stand and make a change, make a difference. I was doing a research and it was speaking about beets. I wasn't a beets person ever in my life, but when I looked at what beets will do for the body and to the body and how it builds up your immune system, it's not even about the taste anymore. It's about, I need to better myself. I need to not just better myself, but I need to help my family, friends, loved ones, and then put that word out into the community. There are foods that we eat, and such as broccoli. Now, we've been cooking broccoli until it was dead for years, to the point where you don't even know what it is. But that's not the proper way. And so I think that with everything that's happening, and when they're speaking of respirators, and when they're speaking of respiratory problems, and they're speaking of all of the difficulties that we're having that really stems down to what we're eating, I think that that will make us mature overnight so that we can make those proper changes.
And I think the easiest way of looking at it is, are we eating to live or living to eat? And what's more important to you? If it tastes good, doesn't mean it's good for you. So we really have to, and we're not saying that you cut everything out of your life and just go to this strict box, but you have to do things in moderation and with consideration of what the impact is and the value it adds in your body and to your life. A lot of the foods, if you don't know the source of it, you shouldn't be eating it. If it didn't come from the ground or an animal or something natural, you probably shouldn't be eating it. I was teasing my son. I said, well, what is a Cheeto? What is that? It looks like styrofoam when you look in the inside. So what are we putting in our bodies? And if you actually look at the active ingredients on a lot of this stuff, it's things that we shouldn't be eating because the body doesn't know how to break it down. And it leads to other health conditions such as cancers, because they're foreign objects to our body, and it tries to fight these things and try to figure out how to get rid of it, and it doesn't know how to handle it. So I know that it's not directly related to coronavirus, but we can't just stop with coronavirus. We have a lot of other issues that we have to address as African Americans, because realistically, the white people, no offense to anyone white watching, but they've been eating to live for a long time. They don't cook, to your point, they don't cook broccoli till it's dead, or green beans till they mush. They eat it raw because that's where you're getting the most value from it. So we have to start to learn some lessons from some of the things that we see them do. And just because mama's mama did it in the past doesn't mean we have to continue to do it in the future. So that's something that we really need to look at and try to improve, not only for you, but for us and my family as well.
And we have to break some of those bad habits. I know you heard the story about the young lady who cooked a ham, and she cut the ham in half and then put it in 2 pots. And so finally they said, why are you cutting the ham in half? And she said, I don't know. Mama used to do that. Mama and them did it. And so they went to Mama and them and said, Mama, why are you cutting the ham in half? She said, because I didn't have a big enough pot to cook it in. A lot of things that we're doing, we're just doing it out of habit. I can remember my mother saying, well, we didn't have this when we were kids. We couldn't eat this when we were kids. This was only for somebody else. This wasn't for our table. So I'm going to cook it for us. But when you fry chicken all day, and then when mom got through frying it, she would put a lid on it and simmer it. She fried it and simmered it in all of that grease. And our bodies don't know what to do with that grease. And we thought that was really a good thing because someone else could eat it and they couldn't eat it. And it was killing us all alone. So I think it's time for us to do some research on your own. I heard that some of the places that we go to look for information are not the best places to go, but look it up. Find the better places to do a research and find out how to change your life and your family's life. And listen, I'm telling you, if you pray and ask God, God will show you what to do and how you should fix things and how you should prepare your meals for your family.
And our foundation is faith. We was brought up on faith. That's really all that we have. And at the same time, I don't think you need to shut down and fast and pray for the Lord to tell you to stay at home. It's obvious that something is going on. It's, by the numbers, it's evident something deadly is going on. And I don't think it's a time to complain. But cabin fever. I don't think it's a time to get cabin fever. I don't think it's a time to have a feeling of wanting to go out or needing to go out. It's a time to get closer to God. It's a time. This time I believe God is allowing us another chance, and we serve a God of a first and second and third and fourth. I thank God for the chances He's given us. He's given us a perfect opportunity with really no speed bumps, no obstacles in our way to get closer to Him. But more and more I'm seeing constant complaining. And if a trip to the grocery store is a matter of life and death, stay at home.
Well, matter of fact, I'm glad you said that because I did hear, and I'm not listening to too much news, but I'm listening to enough to take notes so that on Wednesday evening, I can give you some clarity. But the grocery store is the worst place you can go now because it's more likely that you will come encountered with someone that has corona. And listen at this, 50% and higher of the people that have it, they have no symptoms. So when you call your doctor and you tell them you have a headache, a sore throat, your foot fell off, your tongue is blue, and they're saying, wait until your temperature go up to 105. There's something wrong with that picture because there are some people that are experiencing that, but they don't have all of the symptoms. And so inevitably, you stay at home.
That's a word.
Is that a word? Thank you, hon. You stay at home until you die. When you wake up, you're dead because you were waiting on some symptoms. So the best thing about it is if you're that anxious and you're having a problem staying home, kind of reminds me of the old days when they had cabins that only had a door and no windows. Well, I think we got the Bible. The Bible is the bestseller in the history of the world. And there are so many things that we don't understand. Now we have the time to sit down and read the Word of God and be led by the Word of God. And I promise you, studying the Word of God and being led, we have our Sunday school books. I enjoy studying and researching the Sunday school. And we have Home Informed Mission, if we haven't thrown it away, and Sewing Circle and Bible Band. There's a lot of booklets and there's puzzles and games and things that you can do to occupy your time. I've got about 100 books that I started reading that I haven't finished. This is a good time. And I don't want my books to overwhelm my Bible study, but this is a really good time for me to pull out some of my books and finish up some of my books.
God bless you, Sister Janet Williams, our state purity lady. God bless you. I believe God has given us the perfect opportunity to get close to Him. to see what he wants for our life. It's obvious that this is deadly, and we still got something to say. It's obvious that they're not telling us everything. Still got something to say. It's obvious that it's more severe in the African American, not just in our community, but as it relates to the body. It affects us different. And we still got something to say. I want to get this to a head tonight. How should this impact our life? Because what I'm seeing is the impact is really having a negative effect. We have turned into critics. We have turned into analysts. We looked at the stats. We're looking at New York. I believe God wants us to look at us, look at home, and to get closer to Him.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I was going to challenge you to not look at social media, but look in the mirror. Because I think a lot of what you're looking for on there, you can find within yourself by seeking God. Because the information that you're getting, and a lot of you share it, these links and these conspiracy theories, if it's not going to change your life and your walk, what difference does it make? Who cares where it came from? The only thing that you need to be concerned with is killing you. It's killing the people that you love. So I just challenge you to not be fooled by the distractions in terms of the source, because we can't change where it came from. We just know that it's here. And that's where we really need to be focused.
And we rely on God. God is not our resource. He's our source. Earlier, I believe it was last week, we found out that the virus affect African Americans more severe. Can you expound on the more severe?
So when you talk about severity, it typically means how much the illness will impact you, your body, or your underlying health conditions or the body's function. So when you think about a lot of African Americans with other disease states such as diabetes, hypertension, obesity, they're having a harder time fighting off this illness because their body is already fighting to maintain normal status. So whether it be you have to keep your blood pressure under control, or you're running high sugar numbers, your body can't do both at the same time, so it has to make a choice. Will it sustain your respiratory system, or will it try to control your heart rate and your blood pressure? And it puts too much strain, and oftentimes people stop taking their medications as prescribed when there's other distractions. They focus on the fever or the cough. You have to continue to take your maintenance meds for your underlying health conditions as prescribed by your doctor. Make sure you have at least 2 weeks supply in your house of all of your medications, especially if you're asthmatic and you need inhalers. All of that stuff matters. And I think what we are missing is even this has to do with African Americans as a whole, but also the impact on our life and our lifestyle. Go get your physical, get a checkup. A lot of what's not being discussed is people who are dying, whether it be a healthy African American male, and they'll say, well, he had no underlying health conditions. And you look at them and think about it. They probably have never had their blood pressure checked, or they probably never had their blood glucose checked. So they can't really say for certain what their underlying health conditions are. And that's what we're lacking as an African American community. We need to make sure that we are getting the exams that are necessary to make sure that we're healthy to begin with. So a lot of these people that they're so surprised are sick, well, they probably had something else going on and they just have never gotten a checkup. And a lot of the stigma around going to the doctor, especially in African American men, we need to really get past that, because if you don't know what's going on, you can't address it. So I think that also ties into what's going on with the number of deaths related to African Americans. And the last piece to that is your insurance coverage. Take the time to read and find out what's going on with the plan that you've chosen. Because if you go into these hospitals and you need these ventilators or you need these treatments and your insurance will only cover you being there for 3 days, guess what you're not going to get? And they're not discussing that. I would really like to see the statistics on the number of African Americans that are truly being put on the ventilators versus the number of Caucasians who are potentially affluent and higher prestige in terms of their money. So if you think about things like that, we're already coming into the situation at a disadvantage. And the second piece of that is when you go to the hospital, the first thing they tell you at the door is you got to go by yourself. Can't nobody go with you. We'll update you on what's going on. Now you don't have an advocate there to say, hey, she needs this, or hey, did she get the respirator in time? You don't, or ventilator. You don't have that information. So it's very important that you know and are educated before you even are put into a situation like that. Have your insurance cards. Make sure everything is current. Make sure you have adequate coverage, because no one will be there with you to speak for you.
And just to give you fair warning, they're saying this is new, this is fresh. We're just finding all this out. But I want to serve you notice, it's not new and it's not fresh. And they're not just finding it out. So they already have a jump start on us and our health. But I say to you, through prayer, consecration, and seeking God, you can change your life around for you, your family, and your loved ones by turning your habits, your eating habits around. And another thing, this week, it was announced more than last week that we're yet losing more Black men. It kind of reminds me of all of the murders, the killings, the suicides, the gangbang, and all of those situations that was taking place before Corona came into existence as we know it. We're still losing our Black men. And the Black men, these are the heads. They're the heads. They're our leaders. And we're losing them. So this is no time for us to sit at home and become bored and counting the cars that's driving by. This is not a time for you and your family to jump in the car and run to one of the grocery stores or one of the outlets. This is not a time for that. This is a time for us to bind our forces together in the home, touching and agreeing, as the Bible has already let us know, that where there's 2 or 3 gathered together, touching in agreement on any such thing, that God would be in our midst. This is truly a time to correct our eating habits, to refine and correct and build up our relationships with our families, reaching out, showing someone that you care and you're concerned, and then helping someone else to change their eating habits.
And that's why we're having a show, to not bring fear, but to bring focus on what we should be doing. We hear, depending on what day it is, it's the end of the world. And I believe that has an effect as it relates to the Christians. Some of us are scared and some of us are not. And then the other that's left in the middle is wondering what to do. And that's why we're having this show, because we don't dwell on fear. God has not given us a spirit of fear. He's given us a sound mind, and sound mind deals with being empowered, and that's our intention. We're learning now that there are underlying conditions that's not on the underlying list. Let's talk about that. We're finding that the Black community is getting hit hard. We was once told that it only affects the young or the very young and the elderly. Now we're seeing that this virus is not discriminating.
So I would tell you to think of the coronavirus the same way you would look at hypertension. You can't see it. You may not feel it. It's called a silent killer for a reason. So if you can't actually predict who would get hypertension and how their symptoms may present, it's the same with coronavirus. Just because you think you can't be impacted does not mean you won't be impacted. So when you talk about underlying conditions or disease states, they give us a specific list, such as asthma and hypertension and diabetes and kidney disorders. But I would tell you, if you take medication, you are at risk. If you have diagnosed health conditions, you are at risk. If you are obese, you are at risk. If you are 65 and older, you are at risk. If you are 65 and younger and you're Black, you are at risk. So I don't think that you should try to find a way, because oftentimes we try to put ourselves in a box. And if we can't check every little thing in that box, we try to find a way to exclude ourselves. Well, this isn't the time to do that. Include yourself and protect yourself. Just assume that you're at risk and stay at home. That's the easiest way that I would look at it. I wouldn't try to find statistics on every disease state and you say, oh wait, I have hypothyroidism. That's not on the list, so I'm good. No, it doesn't work like that. You can still be exposed and you can still be impacted.
And you know, another thing that we didn't think about, and I think for the first few weeks, they didn't mention obesity. Now we, honey, that's one thing, don't call me obese, you know what I'm saying? But I did a research on it, and in the Black community, this is basically the way we are. Everything that we celebrate, we're gonna eat. The Black community is still having block parties. But at the research that I did, you know, we don't think it's anything wrong with you being cute and a little plump. You know, that's acceptable in the Black community.
Just big bones.
But yeah, thank you. You cute and you just a little plump and you got big bones because your granny had big bones, but you're 100 pounds overweight. You know, seems unfair because everybody's been calling you cute, but that is not cute. Obese is 10 pounds overweight and up. That's obese. And I can remember when I had this wonderful job and the girls would have a party. I'm not going to tell you what race. They would have a party and they would invite me to the party. And when I would get there, I looked and looked and looked for the wings. All they had was carrots. They had broccoli, cauliflower, beans, dips, cucumbers. Now, all of those things that I named are vital to build your immune system. They were doing that in the 70s, y'all. I asked, where's the wings at? Where's the meat at? They weren't doing that back then. So they have a jump start on us. For us to have a party, for us to have a banquet or a dinner, everything on the table is going to be a killer. Everything is going to be something that's eventually going to take us to our grave. Well, now it's time for us to stop, look, and listen and do some reasoning within ourselves on, do I want to live? And can I survive? And my words are, yes, you can survive.
You talked about food being used to celebrate and party, but I think another underlying health condition that's not addressed is mental disorders and depression. A lot of African Americans eat because they're depressed and because they don't know how to handle that. And it's that there's a stigma associated with depression and people don't want to admit when they're battling that. That is a true disorder. And it's something that we need to talk about more often because people go to food and they use alcohol, hello saints, and different things like that to deal with an underlying condition that they don't want to speak about. So I think that's something that we really need to start to talk about in the African American community.
And I'm guilty, you know, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but when the sister come in and she wearing a 5X and she says she don't eat anything, you know, we don't even deal with that. We don't even try to pray for her or him. We just accept the fact that this is something we can't talk about. Now you're dying slowly and I need to help you. So let's start with ourselves. If you're 10 pounds overweight, you're obese. I didn't say it. Look it up. And it's time for us to do something about it. Half a pound at a time. This is a great time to push away from the table and eat some raw vegetables.
And it's along with the quarantine, it's time to change our life. And again, we have to shut down and turn off the television, because if you are rich, it seems like it's a vacation. The rich and famous catch the virus and seem like they are over it in no time. The African American catch the virus and they're glowing in no time. And so it's really time to evaluate, to itemize our life, and to stay at home. To stay at home. Along with that, and maybe it's just me, but it seems like it's a stigma to this virus. Some people don't want you to know. Some people keeps it quiet. Have you noticed that? The stigma that goes along with this virus?
I definitely have. I think part of it is the way that people are being treated when they find out that someone has it. I mean, just even people not knowing is scary. You know, when you go into the store, if somebody cough, everybody in the aisle will clear out. You know, so you have to think about the perception to others. You know, and then a lot of people are quiet because they may have essential jobs and they're scared they're going to get sent home and not have income. So I think there's a lot of things that go into people being quiet. And when you think about essential workers, you have not only healthcare, you have daily jobs like bus drivers, security and police officers and garbage men and just different things like that they're putting themselves at risk. And a lot of minorities do hold some of those positions, not all, but a lot. And we do want to thank you for the service you provide. And we pray that you are finding a way to protect yourself. And you need to understand that even if you're an essential worker and you get sick, stay home. They cannot penalize you for getting sick. So don't be afraid to speak up if you have a fever or cough, or you don't feel well. You need to address that, and they need to, you know, allow you the time with your family or a quarantine so that you can get better.
And good, again, please subscribe, tell your friends and your neighbors that we're on. The title of this show is The Impact That This Coronavirus Have on Our Life. And I want to go a little bit further because we are, if you will, in the middle of two hot spots. That is Michigan and Illinois. We thank God for Sister Carmen Lulo, and we thank God for Sister Mother Williams on the line with us. But Lake County, I believe, is the second highest reported coronavirus cases in the state. We spend a lot of time focusing on out east. How in the Midwest is this virus going to affect us?
I believe that it's going to creep up on us very quickly and unexpectedly, because to your point, we're distracted watching what everybody else is doing. And you spoke about people doing business as usual and going wherever they want to go, but it won't really impact the people in our area until it impacts them personally, whether it be a family or a friend or a loved one that actually gets the virus. And we start to hit our peak, which will come in the next couple of weeks.
In which, what is your opinion on the curve or the plateau or the rise? In my opinion, I believe it's way more cases than being reported. So then if it's way more cases that's been reported, at some point in time, I believe that the number was 15,000 people in the US as of, I think, Sunday died, which means that 3 weeks ago before Sunday, life was normal. And so at some point, in being in the middle, if you will, of Detroit and Illinois, at some point that's going to come through and affect us. Being in the medical field, what is your opinion of the plateau, if you will, of this curve?
I think the cases are definitely underreported because there's a lack of tests being conducted in a lot of the counties, especially in the African American communities, because they don't know to go and get a test, and they've been basically discouraged from getting a test. They'll tell you to treat your symptoms at home, and then they'll find them dead in their home, and they won't diagnose it as a coronavirus death. It may be from an underlying health condition or complication that's arise because of coronavirus. So I don't think that we should ignore it. And if you have underlying health conditions, you need to contact your doctor if you get the symptoms, even if you think you can control it, because it will come on, and the way that it's being described, it comes on very quickly in terms of the shortness of breath and the severity of that. So you don't want to get to where you're in trouble and you can't get help in time. And in terms of the cases, I know that Indiana, I think we're reporting just under 9,000, about 8,900 cases so far. And being that a lot of people are asymptomatic, I'm sure it's close to double that. So I'm afraid that what's happening is we're basing the curve off of the cases and keeping that completely separate from the deaths. And I think we have to look at both, because people are dying who have never been diagnosed. So we can't miss the fact that it's impacting our community, just like I said, silently. And people are not, going in and getting checked the way that they should, because the fear has overtaken them in a sense, and they don't want to be one of the numbers.
And also, I heard on this week, and I'm careful what channel I'm listening to, and I'm rightly dividing, but they're also speaking of the increase of people that are found dead at home. And we're talking about the Black race, but anybody that has a tan color, whether you're Hispanic, whether you're Japanese, whether you're Chinese, regardless to what your racial background is, if you're tan, you're in jeopardy. And so when you look up the statistics on people of color, you don't find very much. And that's because right now they've not been tested, but they're dying by the thousands. And even the reports of deaths are incorrect. They're saying that we didn't hear about this until January. I'll sell you a house next door, if you believe that, because I don't believe that. And we're being told what they want us to know, and what they want to withhold, they're withholding that. One of the other factors that came out on the report today from a physician was, if you are already struggling with respiratory problems, even if you don't have a fever, but you have some other symptoms such as a sore throat, loss of appetite, lethargic, fatigue, you're already 20% chance of dying. And they will not and cannot waste a respirator on you if you have already gone into that stage. So there's so much that we don't know, but we're so busy being careless, running to the filling station, buying candy bars, and they're saying, don't eat any sweets. And I've only heard that twice. Right. No sugar, nothing with sugar in it. And so when I said it last week, the Saints ran to the store and bought up candy bars and stuff, Reese's Buttercups and Easter candy and stuff. They had an Easter party. But that, it's time to mature and to realize how to help myself. And this, if there ever was a time to help yourself, either we're going to die, so that means we need to get saved, really get saved, because we're not listening and we're not following the rules. And listen, when did we have to be taught to wash our hands? I mean, what happened that somebody have to tell us before we go in the kitchen to wash our hands? What happened that we would go to the store and purchase stuff and start eating it before we get home? Right. Now we're living in the day you can't even open the donuts up. Number one, you had no business with the donuts anyway. We're just doing stuff that we shouldn't be doing. We've got some bad habits that we must.
And it's very important we read between the lines, listen with the third ear. It's very important that we pay attention to what they're not saying. And I believe that the details is in the very thing that they're not saying. Let's talk about the test. Now, not a lot of tests, but the test that I seen on TV is a big old long 6-inch cotton swab.
Foot long.
And from my understanding, it is as of a couple of weeks ago, it was $50 for the test.
Right.
It was $50 for the pre-screening to determine if you would get a test.
Okay.
That's not even including the cost of the test. So the test, yeah, I've not had a test, but I've heard that it's very painful. They are trying to they do have some advanced testing that will become available that is a saliva test. So it's less invasive and it puts the healthcare workers at a decreased risk of exposure because it's not as invasive in terms of the way they conduct the test. But so far, I've not heard anything good about the current test. And the turnaround time has been 7 to 10 days to get the results. So when you think about, not only do you have people who may be asymptomatic carrying it, but you have people who have gone to get a test, may now be feeling better and thought maybe it was negative and gone out into the public and then get a positive. Now, how many people have they exposed? I think the other thing we need to talk about, Google and Apple are partnering to alter their devices to be able to tell you if you've been in contact with someone within 6 feet and they test positive, the app will now let you know that you've been exposed. And I think that that's going to cause a lot of concerns in terms of privacy issues. Now, you do supposedly have to opt in, but think about that. Not only do they know who you've been in contact with, but they also know who's positive and will share that with anybody that you come in contact with if you become positive. So that's the newest thing that they're talking about. And they're saying, oh, this is good because it's not only going to help with coronavirus, but any future pandemic or epidemic will be able to protect you. But I think that a lot of people have concerns about what they're truly sharing in terms of your private information through these devices. So again, I challenge you to try to separate yourself and learn to have actual conversations with each other versus text and Instagram and Facebook, because we need to figure out that this may not be what God has for us in the long run.
And another thing that you said, Dr. Bush, that was interesting, while I was watching our stations and they were talking about the testing that I saw them, the procedure was basically in the mouth, and if they went through the nose, they didn't show it on television. And it was not until somewhere in Africa, they were testing the people, and they literally showed them putting the Q-tip up the nose to the back of the neck. That's when I saw what actually takes place first. Otherwise, it was limited information. As when you watch New York, I didn't see it. And another thing, I didn't see anybody tan. I didn't see a person of color in the United States that they were testing. But when they went to Africa, of course, everybody was Black, and they actually showed them doing the test with the Q-tip in the nose.
Not only that, when you think about the procedure itself, as a healthcare provider, you may have people who are squeamish to stick a Q-tip that far in someone's nose. So what they're reporting is a lot of the results aren't accurate because they may not have gotten a good enough test or swab when they were trying to get to the back of the nose, or the person may have jumped or flinched. And it impacts the results because you have to get a good enough amount, from the back of the nose in order to conduct the test. So along with all of the other challenges, some of the negatives are false negatives because they didn't conduct the test right. And they have you driving through in your car.
Yeah.
So, and another thing, as you mentioned that, how many people have you seen on the respirators And of course, they blur the faces out. But for the last 3 weeks, I've seen them, no one of color, on a respirator. Have you noticed that? That should get your attention. It's time for us to stop, look, and listen.
And to stay at home.
Stay at home.
And we talked about resources, and I really have a special prayer for our undocumented people in the United States, because think about, not only do you have a risk of getting sick, you're afraid to go to the doctor because you'll get deported, or you don't have any type of health insurance. So that, you talk about brown people or people of color, you know, you have a lot of Mexicans in our country and they have no help. Homeless. You think about the 6 foot restriction in terms of proximity. When you're in a homeless shelter, there is no 6 feet. You may be on the floor. You may be in the same cot. You know, you have to look at that. So when you look at how it's spreading, they had a big outbreak at Cook County. Homeless shelters are now a concern. Even here in St. Joe, they're trying to find somewhere to put them when they test positive. And I believe they rented out a hotel or something. But even with that, will they understand what they're doing there? Will they just look at this as, hey, I got a free room, bring all my friends in because we have somewhere warm to sleep? You know, it takes more than just a shelter. It takes education and someone patient to deal with them. So,
And someone that can speak Spanish.
yes,
You know, some of them.
they don't understand what's
No,
on the
they don't
news.
have a clue. They just know that they're ill.
So we got a lot to pray for.
And let me tell you this, there are very few food pantries available to feed them. And a lot of them are afraid because they're here illegal and there is very little help available for them. So that's why we're not using this as a Black situation. We're just using it as a situation of color. It's time for us to reach out. All of us know someone that's here illegal and they need some help now.
Along with that, with the next few minutes we have, what is some daily exercise that we can do around the house to stay, to get our exercise in, and to keep our juices and blood flowing?
One of the things that I made a list for senior citizens, and of course, it will be different for the young people, but sometimes they call it a senior moment. You know, when you walked into the bedroom and now you're standing in the middle of the room and you don't know what you went in there for. Well, thank God that's not happening to me yet, but I've heard it. I heard about it so many times. Make extra trips. When you get up in the morning, don't turn the television on. Have your schedule set where you have things that you're gonna do. Walk through the house extra times. If you're folding clothes, make extra trips. If you're cleaning up, make extra trips. When you're sitting down studying, you can march standing in place. You can do the side step when you're listening to your DVDs and your music. Anything that will keep your body moving and your heart pumping will help you. It doesn't have to be a lot. And really, most of us have old working equipment. I know I do downstairs. Bicycles and trampolines and treadmills. It's time for us to bring some of those things out and use those.
I agree with all of those suggestions, as well as if you have stairs, you have a mode of exercise. Do the stairs up and down, you know, and it doesn't have to be continuous. You can do one trip, take a break, do another trip, get the steps in. Commercials are an excellent time to exercise. It may be a 2 or 3 minute stint, but it will add up. Do squats, do arm lifts. You know, Michael uses our daughter as a weight. He lifts her, he squats, he does, you
Now,
know.
this is the young people. If I do a squat, I'm gonna need a tow truck because I'll squat and I won't be able to get up, so.
But just think about, you know, using your time differently, and don't focus on the fact that it's exercise. I mean, you could do squats or you can do leg lifts while you're brushing your teeth. You can just be moving instead of just standing there. You can be walking in place. Just, you know, you can use different things. A lot of weight-bearing exercises have more impact and are better for you. So you can use a water bottle. That doesn't have to be a lot of weight. You can do arm curls. You can, you don't have to go out and buy anything.
Right.
You may have a gallon of milk. Walk through the house with your gallon of milk. Just think outside the box. Laundry detergent. There's always things that you can do. Anything to get your body moving will help.
Well, our time is almost up. I hope that you have enjoyed this session. I hope that we have said something to inform you. It is my job and my duty as pastor to inform the body of Christ, not just New Jerusalem, but the body of Christ. Again, we are praying for the saints everywhere, the children of God everywhere. We are a part of God's body. We are a part of the people of God, and which means that God has to protect us and God has to take care of us. And so we are covering the children of God, people of God all over the country. If this ministry has been a blessing to you, if you heard something that's been a blessing, that's been informative to you, we ask that you would please partner with us and be a blessing to our ministry. You can send CashApp, and we have Square. Please write to us. Our email address and our building, our church address is down below. Write to us. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know how you doing. We are praying for you, and we pray that you pray for us. And until we meet again, this is the hour of power. God bless the children of God all over. God bless you.